On behalf of CAI, Price.
I'm hoping I feel a little static on the line too, so hopefully that will not distract too much from the presentation. What I'm going to talk about today is service-oriented architecture, and specifically what I'm talking about is issues associated with the costs and the benefits of service-oriented architecture. The research that we're doing at Price, we're actually in the middle of a research project that's funded by the Army to help them get their heads around what the cost issues are and what the benefits are associated with service-oriented architecture. We're, as I said, in the middle of that contract. When I actually submitted this presentation, we were closer to the beginning of that contract. So as I go through my slides, I may talk beyond some of the slides because we've learned a lot more about service-oriented architectures and costs associated with them through the process of doing the research that we've been doing over the last 4 or 5 months. So if I talk beyond my slides, just send me an email and ask me for more information if you would like it. So I'll start with an introduction, and I'll start with some basics. What is a service-oriented architecture, and some reasons why organizations are considering this migration. Then I'll delve into the challenges of the service-oriented architecture, and I'll start with the technical and implementation challenges, and I'll talk to them from an aspect of what are the technical things we want to think about as we're thinking about costing our migrations to service-oriented architecture or costing deployments of new capabilities through a SOA. We'll talk also a little bit about the business and change management issues. And although these are not necessarily directly drivers of cost, we all know that they are not technically drivers of cost, but things that change the way you do business, things that impact the way an organization operates are going to have potential impacts on the cost of projects of migration. So it's important to understand these, and it's good to know them because there can be mitigation of some of the costs associated with dealing with business process changes if you're aware of them in the beginning. And I'll talk a little bit about where we're going with this research. As I said, it's a research and project process, so we don't have all the answers yet. We hope to have all the answers by, not all the answers, we hope to have a good solution that will that will utilize our tool, but above and beyond our tool, that will be a methodology that will be of value to the software community at large. I start by talking about Metcalfes Law, which tells us that the value of a communication network, a telecommunication network, is proportional to the square of the number of users of the system. In other words, the more people that use a system, the more people that are added onto the system, the value of that system, that telecommunication network, is increased non-linearly in a positive direction. So more people using a networking capability more than doubles. 2 people more than double the value that capability brings to the world at large. And service-oriented architectures are just a great way to capitalize on this possibility. The notion that services can be developed, software services can be developed and reused by people inside of an organization or even potentially across organizations. This offers a lot of possibility to people that are in the business of deploying software capability, or people whose businesses and whose doesn't depend on efficient use of software capability. According to Gartner, 80% of mission-critical operational applications and business processes will use SOA to some degree by 2010. So it's something that SOA is something that's really taking hold not only with commercial industries, but as I said, the Army is funding Price to research the cost impacts of SOA. The Army and the other military services are also looking very seriously at how they can use this exponentially increased value of their networks to add efficiency to their operations, both their business operations and their tactical operations. So what is SOA? It uses networking capabilities to integrate applications in a way that's independent of the architecture, the development platform, the vendor, the programming language. In other words, a service is made available through a service-oriented architecture, a service for which the user of that service, which would be another software application, does not need to know all of the technical details about using that service, or about how that service was developed, about how that service is maintained. All a service needs to know that's using another service is what the interface is. It needs to understand what they need, a consumer service and a provider service provider need to agree on a contract as to how they will interface. There's lots of technical challenges. You know, IT organizations are moving from doing less software development and becoming more like systems integrators. They're identifying services, not that there aren't some services that might need to be developed, but in many cases they can identify existing services, and then they're just composing applications. Instead of doing integration and test, as we in the software community think of getting different pieces of software functionality to work together, we're now doing application composition. There are lots of technical challenges, but I definitely believe that the capability is out there. This isn't new. This doesn't present daunting technical challenges. The people that are out there developing software and the IT people that are solving business problems, the capability is out there. But the technical challenges I don't see as really the biggest challenges. There's lots of other challenges that need to be addressed. First of all, when you think about taking within an organization, and you know, SOA can be in theory applied between organizations, but excuse me, right now in general, SOA is really being done internally in organizations and making in order to make their processes more efficient and make it possible for the business to make decisions and have IT be able to respond agilely and quickly, rather than the business being constrained by the fact that IT needs to change lots of things as the business processes change. So there's when you think about the stovepipe applications that are sharing data in some tightly coupled way right now, if we want to open up that data, there needs to be a taxonomy that makes data both visible, accessible, and usable as it's being shared outside of these stovepipes. You know, right now it's being shared pretty tightly coupled. As it's being shared outside of these stovepipes, there needs to be a taxonomy developed to make this data usable. And as I talked about business practices, business practices are changing, and both the IT side of the business as well as the rest of the operational side of the business needs to understand the impact that these changing business practices will have. The IT organization will need to change to become that agile organization focused on application composition rather than software development, and the business needs to understand the best way to invest in SOA so that they maximize the value of SOA. There's governance issues. Governance issues are people need to set the rules and people need to follow the rules, and people need to know what the rules are, and there needs to be an understanding between the service consumers and the service providers as to what the rules are. There's ownership issues. If you're a large corporation that's trying to implement capabilities across the organization, you need to understand when a service gets developed, that service is developed in one part of the organization. If that service is being used by multiple parts of the organization, who's paying for the maintenance, who's setting the requirements, who's making the decisions, things like that. Funding, obviously, who's paying. So just a brief example, service orientation in and of itself, it's not a new concept, certainly. Anybody who uses electricity is a service consumer. The electrical company is the provider. And at least within the United States, anybody who agrees to the contract of the interface, which in this case is that plug that we plug into our walls to get electricity,